As I sat in the dimly lit cafe, sipping my cold coffee, I couldn't help but think about the day my life changed forever. It was the day my wife, Sarah, left me, citing reasons that still echo in my mind like a haunting melody. She said I was poor, that I couldn't provide for her the way she deserved. But what she didn't say, what she hid behind her tears and her anger, was the truth. The truth that would shatter my world into a million pieces and leave me questioning everything I thought I knew about love and betrayal. I remember our marriage like it was yesterday. We were young, in love, and full of dreams. We built a life together brick by brick, with every promise and every kiss. But as time went by, things started to change. Sarah began to grow distant, her eyes no longer sparkling with the same fire that once lit up our home. She started dressing differently, her style evolving from the simple elegance I loved to something more provocative, more alluring. And then there were the messages. It started with small things, a text here, a call there, nothing out of the ordinary, or so I thought. But as the days turned into weeks and the weeks into months, I began to notice a pattern. The messages were always deleted, always erased from our family tablet. It was as if she was hiding something, but I couldn't quite put my finger on it. Then, one day, I stumbled upon a message that wasn't deleted. It was a plan, an explicit plan to meet someone, to leave me behind for a life she deemed better. The message was like a punch to the gut, leaving me breathless and confused. It was then that I realized Sarah wasn't just leaving me because I was poor. She was leaving me for someone else, someone richer, someone more successful. The thought cut deep, like a knife slicing through my heart. I felt betrayed, not just by her actions, but by the lies she had told me, the promises she had broken. As I delved deeper into the messages on our family tablet, I discovered a web of deceit that had been spun over months. There were plans to meet in secret, to escape our life together and start anew. It was like reading a novel, a story of betrayal and infidelity that I couldn't believe was mine. The more I read, the more I realized that I had been living in a dream that Sarah had carefully crafted to keep me oblivious to her true intentions. The divorce was a blur. Papers were signed, tears were shed, and our life together was reduced to nothing more than a memory. But what hurt the most was not the divorce itself. It was the fact that Sarah had invited me to her new home, a grand mansion that symbolized everything she had left me for. It was her way of rubbing it in my face, of showing me what I had lost. I remember the day I visited her, the day I saw the life she had chosen over me. The mansion was grand, with rooms that seemed to stretch on forever. But what caught my attention was the family tablet, now synced with her new life, a constant reminder of how she had planned her escape. It was then that I realized the true extent of her betrayal. She had planned everything, every detail, every lie, every message. As I stood there, looking at the tablet and all its secrets, I felt a mix of emotions. Anger, sadness, betrayal, they all swirled inside me like a storm. But amidst all that chaos, I found a sense of closure. I realized that I deserved better, that I deserved someone who would love me for who I am, not for what I could provide. In the end, Sarah's betrayal taught me a valuable lesson. It taught me that true love is not about wealth or success. It's about honesty, trust, and respect. And though it hurt, though it broke me into a million pieces, I am grateful for the experience. It made me who I am today, stronger, wiser, and more resilient. As I walked out of her mansion, I knew I would never look back. I would never let her betrayal define me. Instead, I would rise above it, creating a new life, one filled with hope and promise. And as I looked up at the sky, I smiled, knowing that my story was far from over. It was just beginning, and this time, it would be a story of redemption and love. The sun was setting behind Sarah's mansion as I walked away, the air thick with scents of cut grass and something expensive blooming in her garden. I felt hollow but oddly light, like the ground beneath me might vanish and I'd float up unencumbered. Her laughter echoed behind those high walls, but I was outside now, no longer trapped in the echo chamber of her double life. I didn't know where I was going, only that I needed to move. My hands trembled with leftover adrenaline from the confrontation, a cocktail of rage, humiliation, and a strange raw relief. My mind replayed the scene in her marble foyer, the family tablet glowing on the counter, her new husband's voice drifting from somewhere deep in the house, and that line of text on the screen that had changed everything. It wasn't just the explicit messages between Sarah and him, though those were bad enough. It was the careful planning, the deliberate cruelty. The text that read, "He'll never suspect a thing, not with the way he clings to hope. I'll get the house, the car, everything. You just be ready." A plan, drafted and giggled over right under my nose. My chest tightened, but the pain was duller now, more like an old bruise than an open wound. I wandered the city for hours, letting the night swallow me up. Neon lights smeared the wet pavement, and every bar I passed seemed to hum with a life I couldn't touch. At a corner deli, I bought a bottle of water and stood outside sipping it, watching couples pass by, arms linked, sharing secrets I'd never know. I crashed at a cheap motel, the kind where the sheets are scratchy and the air smells faintly of bleach. I couldn't sleep. Instead, I replayed everything. How we met, how she laughed at my dumb jokes, the way she used to look at me like I was the only man in the world. I remembered the day she first suggested we sync all our devices for convenience. My stomach turned. What a fool I'd been. Around 3 a.m., I scrolled through my own phone, avoiding the photos of Sarah, the birthday videos, the voice messages where she called me her forever. Instead, I opened a blank note and typed, without really thinking, "Start again, no more ghosts." The words looked ridiculous, but I kept staring at them until the sun rose. The next week was a blur of logistics. Divorces are rarely cinematic. They're paperwork and lawyers and awkward silences. Sarah's new man, Greg, the one from the messages, showed up to a meeting with her, all teeth and expensive cologne. And I realized he'd already moved into my old life. I barely recognized Sarah's face, so composed, so cold. She didn't look at me. She just signed the papers, her hands steady, her gaze fixed on the prize. The house went to her, as did the car and most of our savings. I got the battered Toyota and enough cash to rent a studio apartment on the edge of the city. My new place was small, with lime green walls and a view of the dumpster, but it was mine. The first night, I lay on the floor, listening to the hum of traffic, and felt something like peace for the first time in months. Work kept me afloat, a dead-end job in IT support, but at least it paid the bills. My boss, a wiry woman named Dee, noticed the change in me. She didn't pry, just loaded me up with extra shifts and told me to keep busy, kid. I did. Nights, I walked the city, headphones in, music loud enough to drown out the memories.
But loneliness is a stubborn thing. It creeps in when you least expect it. One night, I found myself scrolling through old texts on my phone. Not from Sarah this time, but from friends I'd neglected during my marriage. Guilt prickled at me. I typed out an awkward message to Mike, my best friend from college, and hit send before I could change my mind. He replied almost instantly, "About damn time. Beer tomorrow?" For the first time in ages, I smiled. Mike hadn't changed. He still wore the same ratty hoodies and cracked jokes at my expense. But there was warmth there, a steadying presence. We met at a dive bar, and after a few pints, I told him everything. He listened, face serious for once, then said, "You know, you're not the first guy to get blindsided, but you might be the first to get out with your soul still intact." His words stuck with me. Maybe he was right. Maybe I wasn't broken, just battered. A few weeks later, I started running. It wasn't a conscious decision. I just woke up one morning, laced up my old sneakers, and hit the pavement. The first run was agony. My lungs burned, my legs ached, but I kept going. Each step felt like a small rebellion against the version of myself that Sarah had left behind. Spring turned to summer. I got stronger. My skin tanned, my body changed. I started sleeping better. I still had bad days, days when the weight of it all pressed down on me like wet cement. But the good days became more frequent. One afternoon, while waiting for my laundry at the laundromat, I struck up a conversation with a woman named Leela. She was folding a mountain of kids' clothes, her daughter spinning in circles nearby. We talked about nothing at first, the weather, the broken vending machine, the price of detergent. But the conversation flowed, easy and unforced.
Over the next few weeks, I saw Leela again and again. We'd chat, sometimes for hours. I learned she was a nurse, recently divorced, raising her daughter on her own. There was a gentleness to her, a quiet strength that drew me in. She never asked about my past, and I was grateful. One evening, as we walked out of the laundromat together, she turned to me and said, "You look lighter than when I first met you, happier." I laughed, surprised. "Maybe I am," I said, and for the first time, I believed it. But healing isn't linear. One night, scrolling mindlessly through social media, I stumbled upon a post from Sarah, a photo of her and Greg at some gala, her smile dazzling, his arm around her waist. My chest tightened. The caption read, "Living my best life." The comments were full of hearts and congratulations. I stared at the screen, the old anger bubbling up. My mind flashed back to the family tablet, the messages, the cold calculus of her betrayal. I wanted to hate her, but all I felt was a dull ache, like pressing on a bruise that would never fully fade. A notification pinged, a message from Leela. "Movie night? My place?" I hesitated for a moment, then typed back, "I'd like that." As I put the phone down, I realized I didn't want to waste any more energy on Sarah. She had her life, I had mine. Leela's apartment was cluttered and cozy, filled with the scent of popcorn and something floral. Her daughter, Ava, curled up beside her on the couch, eyeing me with the serious intensity only a 5-year-old can muster. The movie was some animated adventure, but I barely watched it. I was too busy soaking in the warmth of this new life. Messy, imperfect, but real. After Ava fell asleep, Leela and I talked late into the night. She told me about her childhood, her dreams, the struggles of single motherhood. I shared bits of my own story. Not the ugly details, but enough for her to understand the scars I carried. There was no judgment, only understanding. In the weeks that followed, our friendship deepened. We cooked dinner together, took Ava to the park, watched trashy TV shows. It wasn't a whirlwind romance. It was slow, careful, built on mutual respect and trust. It felt like building a house from the ground up, brick by brick. Still, there were moments when the past came knocking. One morning, I checked my email and saw a message from Sarah. The subject line was blank. My stomach dropped. For a moment, I considered deleting it unread, but curiosity went out. The message was brief. "I hope you're well. I'm sorry for how things ended." That was it. No explanation, no apology for the lies or the pain. Just a bland, impersonal note. I stared at the screen, anger flaring. She didn't get to have the last word, not this time. I closed the laptop and went for a run, the steady rhythm of my feet pounding out the frustration. Later, I told Leela about the email. She listened, then said, "You don't owe her anything, not even a response." She was right, of course. Some things are better left unsaid. Months passed. Leela and I grew closer. I met her friends, her parents, became a fixture in Ava's life. We took a trip to the coast, the three of us, and for the first time in years, I felt a sense of belonging. One evening, as we watched the sun set over the water, Ava tugged at my sleeve. "Are you going to stay with us forever?" she asked, her eyes wide. I glanced at Leela, who smiled softly. I hesitated.
my heart pounding, not wanting to make a promise I couldn't keep. Leela sensed my uncertainty and gently squeezed my hand. "It's okay," she whispered. "We don't need all the answers right now." Ava, sensing the gravity of the moment, looked from me to her mother, her small face searching for reassurance. That night, after Ava was tucked in, Leela and I sat on the porch, the sound of the ocean a constant hum in the background. The air was thick with the scent of salt and the lingering warmth of the day. I finally voiced the fear that had been gnawing at me since Ava's question. "What if I'm not good at this?" I said, staring at my hands. "What if I mess it up like I did before?" Leela turned to me, her eyes steady. "You're not the same person you were with Sarah, and I'm not expecting you to be perfect, just present." She reached for my hand, her touch grounding me. "We'll figure it out together, one day at a time." Her words were a balm, but the reality of blending our lives wasn't so simple. When we returned home, the challenges began to surface in ways I hadn't anticipated. Ava, usually cheerful, started acting out at school. She'd come home sullen, slamming doors and snapping at Leela. I tried to give her space, but it was clear she was struggling with the changes. One evening, as I helped her with her homework, she suddenly pushed the books off the table. "Why do you even care?" she snapped, her voice trembling. "You're not my dad." The words stung, but I understood. I was an outsider, intruding on her world, and she was caught in the middle of a loyalty bind, loving her father, missing the life she'd known, and trying to accept me into her family. I took a deep breath, pushing down my own hurt. "I know I'm not your dad," I said softly, "but I do care about you and your mom. And if you ever want to talk, I'm here." She glared at me, then burst into tears. I resisted the urge to comfort her, sensing she needed to feel her anger. After a moment, she wiped her face with her sleeve and muttered, "Sorry." It wasn't much, but it was a start. Leela and I talked late into the night about how to support Ava. We realized we needed to be patient to let her set the pace. We also knew we had to be honest with each other about our expectations and fears. The truth was, blending families was harder than either of us had imagined. There were different parenting styles, unspoken rules, and emotional landmines at every turn. A few weeks later, Ava's father, Mark, called unexpectedly. He'd been mostly absent since the divorce, but now he wanted to be more involved. Leela was torn between relief and anxiety. She wanted Ava to have a relationship with her dad, but she worried about the instability his reappearance might bring. Mark showed up on a Saturday, all charm and promises. Ava was overjoyed, her face lighting up as she ran into his arms. I stood back, feeling like an intruder in my own home. That evening, after Mark left, Ava was quiet, lost in thought. When I asked if she was okay, she shrugged. "I miss my old room. I miss my old school." Her words cut deep. I realized that for Ava, our new life wasn't just about gaining a stepfather. It was about losing the world she knew. I suggested we visit her old neighborhood, see her friends, maybe even spend a weekend with her dad. Leela agreed, grateful for the suggestion. We were learning, slowly, that being a blended family meant honoring the past as much as building the future. As the months passed, the tension in the house ebbed and flowed. Some days, Ava and I laughed over breakfast, sharing silly jokes. Other days, she barely spoke to me, retreating into her room. Leela and I had our own struggles, disagreements over discipline, household routines, even how to handle finances. We learned that open communication was the only way through. We couldn't assume we were on the same page. One evening, after a particularly rough day, Leela broke down in tears. "I feel like I'm failing everyone," she confessed. "Ava's unhappy, you're trying so hard, and I just want everything to be okay." I held her, letting her cry. "We're not failing," I said. "We're just learning, and we're doing it together." That night, we made a pact to check in with each other every week, to talk about what was working and what wasn't. It wasn't a magic solution, but it helped. Ava's school performance began to slip, her grades dropping as her mood swings became more frequent. Leela and I met with her teacher, who suggested counseling. At first, Ava resisted, but after a few sessions, she started to open up. The therapist helped her express her feelings without fear of judgment, and slowly the defiance and anger began to fade. Meanwhile, Mark's involvement remained unpredictable. Some weeks he'd show up with gifts and take Ava for ice cream. Other times he'd cancel at the last minute, leaving her disappointed. Leela and I tried to shield Ava from the worst of it, but we couldn't protect her from everything. We focused instead on creating stability at home, on being there for her no matter what. One afternoon, Ava came home from school and handed me a drawing. It was a rough sketch of our family, Leela, Ava, and me, holding hands under a rainbow. "It's us," she said shyly. "Do you like it?" I felt a lump in my throat as I looked at the picture. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. "I love it," I said, hugging her. "Can I put it on the fridge?" She nodded, a small smile tugging at her lips. It was a tiny victory, but it meant the world to me. As the seasons changed, so did our family. Ava's outbursts became less frequent. She started bringing friends home after school, filling the house with laughter. Lila and I found our rhythm, learning to navigate the complexities of co-parenting and blending our lives. There were still arguments, still moments of doubt, but we faced them together. One evening, as we sat around the dinner table, Ava looked at me and said, "You're not my dad, but you're pretty cool." It was the highest compliment I could have hoped for. Later, as Lila and I lay in bed, she turned to me and said, "I'm glad you're here. It's not easy, but it's worth it." I nodded, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. We weren't a perfect family, but we were ours, and that was enough, for now and for whatever came next. If you've ever faced the storm of a broken heart and found your way to something new, you know how hard and how beautiful it can be. If this story moved you, please like, comment, and subscribe for more real-life journeys. The months that followed brought unexpected challenges. Ava started having nightmares again, waking up crying about her father not coming back. Lila and I found ourselves navigating the complex dynamics of a blended family, something neither of us had fully prepared for. One evening, after a particularly difficult day where Ava had refused to do her homework and screamed that I wasn't her real dad, I sat on the porch feeling defeated. Lila found me there, staring at the stars. "She's testing you," she said softly, settling beside me. "The therapist said it's normal. She's afraid you'll leave too." I understood the logic, but it didn't make the rejection hurt any less. Sometimes I wonder if I'm making things worse for her. "You're not," Lila said firmly. "She's just scared. We all are, in different ways." The next morning, I found Ava in the kitchen, quietly eating cereal. I poured myself coffee and sat across from her. We ate in silence for a while before she looked up. "I'm sorry I was mean yesterday," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's okay," I replied. "Being angry is allowed, but we need to talk about it instead of yelling." She nodded, then asked, "Do you promise you won't leave like my dad did?" The question hit me like a punch to the chest. I set down my cup and looked directly at her. "Ava, I can't promise that nothing bad will ever happen, but I can promise that I choose to be here every single day, and that's not going to change." Something shifted in her expression. It wasn't immediate trust, but it was a crack in the wall she'd built around herself. Co-parenting with Ava's father remained a constant source of stress. He was inconsistent with visits, often canceling at the last minute, leaving Ava disappointed and confused. When he did show up, he would undermine the rules Leela and I had established, telling Ava she didn't have to listen to me because I wasn't her real parent. The situation came to a head one Sunday when he dropped Ava off 2 hours late, reeking of alcohol. Leela was furious, and I could see the fear in Ava's eyes as she watched her parents argue on the front porch. "This can't continue," I told Leela after we'd gotten Ava settled inside. "She's caught in the middle and it's destroying her." Leela nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I know, I just don't know how to fix it."
We decided to seek family therapy, something that felt both necessary and terrifying. The first session was awkward, with Ava sitting rigidly between us, arms crossed. The therapist, Dr. Martinez, had a gentle way of drawing out our fears and frustrations. Blended families face unique challenges, she explained. Children often feel torn between loyalty to their biological parents and acceptance of new family members. It's a process that requires patience and understanding from everyone. Over the following weeks, therapy became a safe space where we could address the elephant in the room. Ava admitted she felt guilty for liking me, worried it meant she was betraying her father. Lila talked about her own guilt over the divorce and how it had affected Ava. I shared my fears about overstepping boundaries and my frustration with feeling like an outsider. "You're all grieving," Dr. Martinez told us during one session. "Ava is grieving the family she thought she'd have. Lila, you're grieving the marriage that ended. And you," she looked at me, "are grieving the simple love story you thought you'd have." It was painful to hear, but it was also liberating. We weren't broken, we were just healing. The breakthrough came during a camping trip we took that fall. It was supposed to be a fun weekend, but everything went wrong. It rained, the tent leaked, and Ava got stung by a bee. As we huddled in the car, soaking wet and miserable, Ava started laughing. "This is the worst camping trip ever," she giggled, and suddenly we were all laughing, the stress and tension of the past months melting away. "You know what?" Lila said, wiping tears from her eyes. "Let's go home, order pizza, and watch movies in our pajamas." "Can we build a fort in the living room?" Ava asked. "Absolutely," I replied, and for the first time, she smiled at me without reservation. That night, as we lay in our makeshift fort, Ava curled up between Lila and me. I felt something I hadn't experienced since before my marriage fell apart. Contentment. Not the desperate happiness I'd chased with Sarah, but a quiet, steady peace. "This is nice," Ava mumbled sleepily. "We should do this more often." "We will," Lila whispered, reaching over to squeeze my hand. As I lay there listening to their breathing slow, I realized that love wasn't always the grand gesture or the perfect moment. Sometimes it was choosing to stay when things got hard, showing up even when you felt inadequate, and building something new from the pieces of what came before. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. We'd still have bad days, arguments, and moments of doubt, but we'd face them together as a family, imperfect, complicated, and real. If this journey through heartbreak to healing resonated with you, please like, comment, and subscribe for more authentic stories about love, loss, and finding your way home. One of the biggest challenges we faced was navigating the complexities of blended family life. Ava would sometimes struggle with the idea of her mom being with someone else, even if she loved me. It was natural. She had lost her dad, and I was the new person in her mom's life. Leela and I made sure to give her space, to let her express her feelings without judgment. We also had to establish new routines and traditions. Sundays became our family day, where we'd cook dinner together and play board games. It was a small ritual, but it brought us closer. Leela and I would often sit down with Ava to talk about her day, her hopes, and her fears. It was crucial to keep the lines of communication open, to ensure she felt heard and understood. As time passed, Ava began to see me not just as her mom's partner, but as a part of her family. She'd ask me for advice, share her dreams with me, and even occasionally seek my opinion on things she cared about. It was a slow process, but she was learning to trust me, to rely on me. One evening, as we were setting the table for dinner, Ava turned to me and said, "I'm glad you're here." It was a simple statement, but it filled me with joy. For the first time, I felt like I was truly a part of this family. But with progress comes new challenges. Lila and I faced the usual stressors of any relationship: differences in opinion, disagreements on parenting styles. Yet we were determined to make it work. We attended counseling sessions together, learning to communicate better, to navigate our differences without letting them tear us apart. It wasn't always easy. There were nights when we'd sit in silence, frustrated with each other. But we never gave up. We knew that our love, our commitment to each other, and to Ava was stronger than any obstacle. As the months turned into years, our little family became more cohesive. We found our rhythm, our way of living together that worked for all of us. Ava grew into a confident young girl, secure in the knowledge that she had two adults who loved her unconditionally. One day, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset, Lila turned to me and said, "You know, I never thought I'd find happiness again after everything that happened. But here I am, with you and Ava, and I couldn't be more grateful." I smiled, feeling the same sense of gratitude. "Me too," I said, "me too." In that moment, I realized that life doesn't always give us what we expect. Sometimes it gives us something better. A family that's not perfect, but is ours. A love that's not without its challenges, but is worth fighting for. As the stars began to twinkle in the sky, we sat there in silence, enjoying the peace of our little family, grateful for the journey that had brought us to this place. If this story resonated with you, drop a comment and hit like. It really helps the channel. And subscribe for more true stories.